This is as groovy as it gets.
Oprah, Can You Hear Me? Oprah vs. Donald 2020 is a conversation by Julie Benetti and Susan Barbaro and a production of EI Alliance, copyright 2019. America is courtesy of New Threads off their new album, Felonious Wilma. Hi, this is Julie, and I am back with Susan, and this is our Oprah versus Donald Out of Focus podcast. Because we have no idea where this is going. You're here along for the ride, and we're going to let the energy take it wherever we want, because there's a lot of stuff we've been shooting at each other.
I think the biggest thing that we wanted to address is Oprah gave an amazing speech at the graduation last weekend, it was, I think. She gave a great speech. It was very moving. It was very empowering. And, it's interesting because I didn't see or hear the speech, but I did read the article. And, I read it, and part of me is, I think, the situations that she went into probably did occur to her, but she didn't write the article. I can't imagine she wrote that article. That was the sense I got. And the reason why we started talking about that, and I kind of from there went into, we really don't know who she is. And we've said the same thing about Trump. Right. And I know you started off and that's all you got in, and then of course I jump in. But I had a conversation over the past few days, and I was talking about Trump, and I was saying that he appears to somehow, no matter what distractions, no matter what's going on, he has a focus, and he's able to keep the focus no matter what. And I have to say, that is what I find admirable. I don't particularly care for him as a person, and I'm not saying that I agree with what his focus is or what it isn't, but I find it admirable how he can keep his focus when everybody around him appears to be jabbing him. And of course, he goes back and he calls names and does things, which,
Well, it's interesting how you're terming the keep his focus, because, the reason why I said out of focus is because we've been batting a bunch of topics back and forth, and they're all related, but we don't know how to filter them together so they're one theme, because we're very conscientious about how we do our podcasts, because we don't just get on and talk about what we had for breakfast and... I don't know what I had, cereal, and
I know what you had for lunch.
I know. And we don't, we go on with a real intent in the conversation to get into the energy. And so while you're saying, you see that he really keeps his focus, I keep on thinking, well, the proof to that is based in all the environment around him and what's going on. And he's like not running down the street of the White House going, oh, I don't want to be president. I mean, so is it because of what you're not seeing that we think that, he's keeping his focus, is because of what we're seeing? And, I have to say, Oprah's speech was great at the college, what she did. Yeah. She had some Instagram posts. She was out there going with Gail to the Statue of Liberty. And I started to think, we really don't know her. We don't know what's going through her head. We don't know what she's planning. We don't know what she's doing. Yet...
So,
well, yet, what does that really mean? Because way back when, we accessed the energy about Trump when we knew he was going to win, and we accessed the energy about Oprah, and we knew she was going to run.
She has to run. If she does,
So we keep looking. I agree with you. It's frustrating, and this is the distraction that takes us out of the focus. Because, are we sitting here saying, is she going to announce it? Is she going to announce it? And then it doesn't matter, because a bunch of, I'm going to say this in a really horrible way, a bunch of bozos have their hat in the ring, and they announced it. Does that do anything for us? No. Does that tell us they're more focused? No.
So, that's actually a great point. That's a great point. The fact that she hasn't announced doesn't mean she doesn't have a very strong focus. I think, because we do talk off, outside of the podcast, because when we go into it, we go into the energy and we try to somehow discern what we're getting. and we talk it out, and we kind of want to have an idea of where we're going with it before we go into the podcast, because of course everything we do we work really hard at. And we talked about this, that I'm not going to get on and do a podcast on garbage. I'm not going to say the same thing over and over.
Right.
But I will somehow go into the energy and what is it. And I get this huge controversy that outside appears as though she's not running. All the things she said, yet I just feel the energy is right there that she has to run. And it's not me. It's not me saying Oprah has to be president.
Right.
It's like what we said before. We picked up she's going to run. And, you know, I mean, we can go as far as to say we think she's going to win.
Right.
That's what the energy is really kind of saying. And if she doesn't, and it's got nothing to do with me. And I've made the comment before that whoever's president really doesn't affect us. Whether Hillary was president or Trump was president, really isn't going to affect us. We're still going to do the podcast. We're still making the money we make. We're still doing what we're doing.
Right.
But so it's not like I have a vested interest other than just feeling that overwhelming sense that this is what's going to happen and this is where it's going. And yet when you look outside and you hear all the things that she says, it appears as though she's not running. And to me, that's my internal conundrum. It's like at the outside and the inside just doesn't match up.
And, you know, as you were talking, I thought, okay, say, you know, you're going to Paris in October. So would that be in your focus right now? Would I be able to tell that you're going to Paris in October?
I don't know if I talk about it the way I always talk about things. You probably would know. You'd be like,
there's a really good point, because oftentimes, now if you go into any of our ancient text podcasts, you go into any of the Neville Goddard material, the Joseph Murphy material, if you're talking about something, are you really keeping it in your focus? Because if you're talking about it and you're sharing it, this opens up a whole other thing. If you're talking about it and you're sharing it, because you know me as a writer, I will not tell you what I'm writing.
Right.
I will not tell you the projects that I'm working on. We work together, but I have a whole bunch of other projects. I don't even tell my husband. I don't tell anyone. I don't even discuss them with myself, which may sound odd, but as a writer, I go right into the energy and I see what comes. And the minute I talk about it, the minute I have a conversation about it, that's not what's going to occur. Something else is going to occur. And so there's something beautiful about this. And I do have to say, because we were talking earlier, and I'm going to speak out of turn, and I am going to say, because I didn't say it at that time, you had mentioned this, and I thought, wow, I felt the same way. Because when I read that speech, and I heard what she did, and I thought, wow, we've been saying all these things, and we're not saying mean things. No. We're not saying bad things. No. We're looking at energy, and we're trying to figure out and interpret actions and what's going on. And I started to think myself when I read this, like, wow, she seems like really there. She seems really in the energy. But, you know, like you said, and this is my terminology, something doesn't fit with it. Something doesn't fit. Right. And when you said, you know, do you think she really wrote it? I don't know. I mean, Donald Trump has a speechwriter, and everybody loves when he goes off.
Right.
And he goes into that spontaneous presence of what he's going to say. Everybody loves it.
Well, you know what's interesting is that you said we're not mean when we say these things about Oprah. And the truth is, if you go through our book that we wrote and you listen to any of the other stuff, I mean, we're not mean to Trump either. We're not judging anybody. What we're doing is looking and feeling the energy and sharing that, because as we see it on the TV or through the media, the political jargon is just blah 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 blah. It's up. There's no one thinks and takes a step back and looks at the big picture. And so it really is who likes who. It's all biased, and everyone has someone they want to win, and they're going to turn it around. And it doesn't matter who you're for or against. It doesn't matter. I can't stand when anyone does that to me. So what we're doing is actually there is no bias. We're looking at the energy, and like I said, I go to that speech, and I'm not judging, or it was a beautiful speech, and it sounds like something Oprah might say. Doesn't feel like she wrote it to me. That's the only thing I could say. And that doesn't mean, and the reason, and so that's all I can say. I can go into my own interpretation.
Right.
That maybe I'll do off the podcast, but.
Well, part of that as well is in my feed, an old interview, I think of early last year, came through with Stephen Colbert, where he did that funny skit. Mm-hmm. And again, it's funny, I didn't term it this way and I didn't define it this way when I saw it, because I was trying to analyze. He did the funny skit with Oprah there, and God shows up.
Yeah, that was
and
funny.
It was really
actually
funny.
Very creative,
yes,
I thought. Yeah.
It was. And for all of us out here, even in our own daily lives, we look for signs. And she's saying, she hasn't gotten a sign, and however she says it, and I'm not going to quote her, yet I was kind of mining that interview, and she was just playing along, and I realized it's just entertainment.
Right.
We know it's entertainment. This isn't a real conversation about what her thoughts are, which are actually interesting there too, because, we don't really have a real conversation about what Trump's thoughts are. We don't really know what anyone's saying. You and I talk all the time, and we have other thoughts that we don't know. And so there's an energy there and a vibration there. And the sign that we would think, how do we define that in our lives when we're looking for a sign? And that's part of the conversation that we were having earlier.
Right.
And so when she's saying she's looking for a sign, is it, in one of our funny podcasts before, we asked people, go ahead, send her a Twitter message, that says, at Oprah, run, 2020. And, would that be the sign? Are we trying to make a sign? Yet there's a real vibration to when you get something, and that there's almost a present totality in it, and it's very fleeting when you get that sign and
Well, it's funny because we have blotch cards that we do, and I sent a thing and had a picture, blotch holding a sign and it said, Oprah 2020, and the caption was, is this a good enough sign for you? and but the truth is that when you do get a sign, it's almost has nothing to do with actually what you are trying to decide. And if you said to somebody else what that sign was, they'd probably be like, what are you talking about?
Right.
But it could be something that it's a feeling, a knowing. It can be a looking at a tree and seeing the leaves blow, and the way it could be something so minute that you understand it, you feel it. And maybe it's, that's why the joke was with the blotch. It's like, here's a sign, but it's something that is so inside within you. And we talk about what we feel, and we don't know Oprah, and we say it. And the reason I say it at this point is because I don't know her life. I don't know what's going on, and I don't want to decide. But for me to not know her and get this feeling so strong. It's almost like, why, that's why we do the podcast. Like, where else do you go with that? Right.
And that's a really, really important point, because when you can clearly and without judgment, without bias, without consternation, without anything, clearly go into the energy and you catch that sign, it's like, catching, a light beam or something that just goes, whoa, and then you can't hold on to it. No. But it's almost like you were, it's almost like you time traveled. You were there, you saw it occurred, you came back and you went, oh, huh?
And it was the same, like we said, in April 2016, that point where we got, oh my gosh, she's going to win. We were talking about Trump. It's not because we're for Trump. It doesn't matter. We weren't for anyone. We were curious as to why what was going on with Trump. So we kind of delved in, like, let's go in the energy of it. And we looked at each other, and we instantaneous both looked and both knew, oh my God, he's going to win. There's no doubt he's going to win. And, despite, and I remember at certain times, like, oh God, he can't win. Look what he just said. And he did.
Right.
And that's what we got with Oprah. And there's one other thing I would like to address, if you're okay, is I've been talking with a lot of younger people, and the Game of Thrones is the big thing, because I've been dying to get this in, and I have to say, because we talked about this in another podcast about a woman president, and would I vote for a woman president? And would you vote for a woman president? I would love to see a woman president. However, I'm not going to vote for any woman.
I agree.
There's a lot of women out there that, there's no way. And, I just throw this out there because I just think it begs to be said. We have out there the Me Too movement and the Kavanaugh hearings and, everything that's surrounding women being oppressed and being demoralized and assaulted and, sexually abused. And while all of this is going on, the two huge things going, number one was 50 Shades of Grey.
Yeah.
And let's face it was more women watching that than men. And now the Game of Thrones, and I didn't see it.
Me neither.
I've heard about it. I saw a little bit of it when someone who I was with was watching, and I just caught. And I have to say that the way that they treated women in the Game of Thrones, and the premise is, well, this is what was going on at the time. And that could be true. But to sit here and watch the degradation and and I'm not one who's more like, ooh, silly. Like, most of the time I'm like, oh, Christ, I give him a smack in the head. That's what I would say, blah, 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 blah. I would no longer put up with this BS. And over, and I know 7-8 seasons, there was at not one point was there a woman, and again, I don't want to go into the whole story, but the degradation, and everybody can't get enough of it. I don't understand that.
And yet it's brought up, we mentioned points in our book about, how people respond to things, and, whether it be about his hands that time and about, other things that occurred, and yet it's brought up, and there's a balance or something.
And then we point the finger, and I look at that as a woman. And I say, wait a second, what am I really, and again, this could be causing a lot of controversy. And I always say, Susan, say it so everyone's clear. But something, we sit there and we give mixed signals. We don't like this. How dare you? We're going to stand up. And that's when I turn around and I get angry and I say, are we really standing up for ourselves? We are not. That Me Too and everything, it's all garbage, because we go from Me Too to 50 Shades of Grey. Then we go from the Kavanaugh hearings, then we go right into the Game of Thrones. At what point is a woman going to step in and say, enough? That we're not playing this game.
Right.
And that's where I hope Oprah, because I look out there and I mean, this is it.
Right.
It's like, no. We're not playing games anymore. As women, we're coming together and we're going to stand up. And this is not going to be when to sit there and cry and whine. We're not going to sit there and then go behind the scenes and watch, ooh, this is funny, ha, 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 tie me up. We're not doing that. We're going to sit there and say we are women. We're going to be treated like a woman. And I believe Oprah can do something along those lines.
And I agree with you, and it's funny because here's the proof and point, because of course this came up in some research that I was doing. So here's the proof and point, because Oprah, Bloomberg actually describes her as the person of numerous unlikely firsts. And there's nobody in that situation, and it's not like she has to go out and be a poster child. No, we're not saying that at all.
No.
And as an unlikely first of standing up and being who you are and saying, this isn't something great. Everybody else is watching it. I'm not interested.
Right.
I haven't seen any of it either. I'm not interested either. And I'm amazed. Okay, case in point, there was an email I got from a friend who's into nature, who sings, who's into the elements, who does a lot of magical and spiritual things. And she was sick, and she decided, let me, binge watch, because I have time, I'm in bed, I have the flu, let me binge watch Game of Thrones. And she was mortified by it, yet she still watched it. I don't know why, and said the only way she could watch it was by covering her eyes and ears.
So when what did she do?
The violence came out. And I think, and here's someone who embraces nature and women, and is there that much peer pressure?
Well, the other side of this is, I think of, I have 2 daughters, you get a niece, and we all, it's not even just my own kids. I look at these young women who are smart, brilliant, and it's like, here we are, the adults, we're giving them mixed signals.
Right.
You stand up and you say this, but you know what? You go and watch 50 Shades of Grey and have all these, ideas about women, being submissive to a man and whatever they want you do. But no, you stand up. It's like, do I do it? Do I not do it? And then what does that do for your own self-esteem?
Right.
Where do I fit in?
Right.
And it really bothers me when I see those things, and that's why I laugh at the Me Too movement. It's like, what the heck is this? This is crying. Now go be a submissive, and then go from being a submissive. We're gonna, the Kavanaugh hearings, and of course, him, like Clarence Thomas, gets in, and then what happens? We bring in Game of Thrones, where women are completely, and I'm not putting that on Oprah, because it's not up to Oprah. The only thing I believe is we adult women need to be mentors. And the only way we can mentor is to be the example. That's all we can do. Right. I can't tell these young women what to do. Who the heck am I to do it? But we got to be the example. Right. And by being the examples, the Game of Thrones, guess what? If every woman said, you know what, I'm not playing that part, the Game of Thrones would not have been made.
Right.
Unless they had guys that were going to dress up with women, and then that probably would have even fit in better, because here's the joke.
And you know what's funny too? My husband's into sci-fi, and I asked him, I said, and he's not into pop culture at all, and I asked him, did you read it? And he said, I started to read it, and it was way too violent.
The Game of Thrones?
Yeah, the Game of Thrones. I started to read it from the original author, and he said, I wasn't interested in that kind of story.
Oh, God.
That was just he said, that's not a story. That's, and he's into huge sci-fi.
Yeah. Well, I didn't even get into the story, because that's all
just talking about a guy, from a male standpoint. And so, when we realign this back with Trump and Oprah, I mean, Trump goes on with his branding and everything, and he's brilliant, and how and what he does and how he says, and his persuasion and what's occurring, and the chaos and all that kind of stuff. And then you have Oprah, who's has testimonials of unlikely firsts of what she's done through her career. And I'm not going to go back through her biography, because we know. We've seen it. Again, we know. How easy is that? And we were told that we know, about Donald Trump and his career.
Right.
And so there's a bunch of unlikely firsts. And this is, it's a beautiful point that you brought up about all that. It looks like a tangent, but it fits in so well here, because it's not
like it was set up for her.
Right, exactly. Like it was set up for her. And so when we're looking at things, it's funny, when we're looking at things and things seem so out of focus, how are we really seeing things? Thank you for listening to this production from EI Alliance. Check out our Amazon authors pages for books and podcasts, along with our Donald Trump and Oprah books for this series. Find great music by New Threads on iTunes, Spotify, and on newthreads.us.